Hello, welcome to Microfiche Microphone. I'm Micah, and on this channel we look at microfiche from the past, old newspaper articles in the public domain, and we look at them with our modern eyes, our modern perspective, and see what we can learn from them. On this microfiche time capsule, we are diving back into the Ladies' Home Journal. And there are several articles, I'm not sure if there's subtitles, but they're all about motherhood. So we have 3 this time: A Mother's Corner, A Hint to Mothers, As the Children See Us, and Do Not Ridicule Children. All of which I found very interesting, and I thought they might be interesting to read. So let's dive right in. This is in the Ladies' Home Journal from January 1884. This was the first year it was published. For the Ladies' Home Journal, A Hint to Mothers by M.O.J. A lot of people used nom de plumes back then, and it was quite common for people to only use their initials. A lot of people knew who they were just because they were familiar with them, but obviously not everybody did. All right. Baby, say mama. Baby sat in his mother's lap, bright and pretty as a fresh rosebud, the very picture of health and good nature. His whole vocabulary so far amounted to just 3 words, and these 3 he could say perfectly. He would almost always talk when alone with Mamma, but a friend had come in, and she very much wished her to hear the little music tones, but Baby was shy and only curled his head down on her breast, a roguish smile lighting his blue eyes and dancing in the dimpled cheeks and rosy mouth. "Won't Baby say Mama? Just once? Mama?" "Well, what does the dog say? Baby say bow wow?" But no, Baby wouldn't. Mamma tried again, and then patting his round, plump knee, asked, "What's this?" Baby only smiled and colored closer. "What's this, Baby? Baby say knee." "Don't press him, Mary," said her friend. "It's no use, and in one way will do harm." The mother seemed surprised. "If you urge him when not inclined to talk, it will only induce a habit of setting his will in opposition to yours, a habit that will grow with his growth and strengthen with his strength, and will become obstinacy. Now, of course, you cannot reason with him, and there is no more moral wrong in his refusal than refusing his milk when he's not hungry. But this, like all childhood, is seed time. Much may be done, almost from earliest infancy, by inducing unconsciously to the child habits of obedience and preventing their opposites, thus making the after way far easier for both child and mother." "I see it now," the lady said frankly. "I never thought of it in this light before, but it is reasonable, and I will remember it. Of all things I desire to avoid a contest, as it is called, in the future with my children. That it can be prevented, nay, ought to be prevented, is my firm belief," rejoined the friend. "Temporary and external obedience may be obtained by it in some cases, though not always even that, but at what a fearful cost, not only of suffering, but affection and confidence between child and parent, and never will be the same as without it. And breaking the will, as it is called, instead of training it, is a dire mistake. There can be no self-governing force, no stability of character without a resolute, well-directed will. The young tree, you know, must be pruned, never broken. The colt must be trained by gentle firmness, not severity, and immortal souls and human hearts need no less care and watchfulness." Well, I'm going to be honest here. I think that the sentiment is good. I feel like their hearts are in the right place, in that they are showing a baby who only can speak 3 words, so I'm guessing age around between 9 and 12 months, and should not be forced to say something when they're not inclined to talk. And that I agree with. I really think it's great that they mention this in an article from back in the day, before there were really that many real philosophies about raising children. And this is more of baby-led, There's a lot of things you can do baby-led when they are very, very young. Baby-led weaning, so you offer them different foods that they can pick up themselves and feed themselves with. For example, you might cut slices out of an apple without the skin that they can chew on, and it won't hurt them. But it's large enough that they can grasp it in their hands. Like, that's one thing that I did with my children, and I really think that that's the right way to do it, because spoon feeding a baby teaches them to continue to eat as long as someone is feeding them. And I don't really think it's the healthiest way. I think that a child being able to decide for themselves how much they eat is much healthier, in my opinion. And so this is, in some ways, someone teaching them how to be healthier, have a healthier relationship with their child. So they're not like forcing their child to perform. And I think the original idea was this forced performance. And so in that sense, I really appreciate that. I think that the way they went about it was very old-fashioned, like to the point that we would never go about it in this way today. Like maybe not never, but like it would be super cringy. So I find this a little cringy. It is because if you are like staging a natural interaction with you and your friend, with your baby in your lap, like, first of all, does your friend even have children? Like, what do they know about children? Second of all, like, having the friend, like, explain it in a scientific way, and then having the mothers be like, oh, I understand now, I see what you mean, is, like, it's basically something that never happens. Never. Like, in real life, it just doesn't happen unless it's staged like this one is. So I think today we would go about it by having a scientific article explaining the science behind the reasoning and why you should do it this way, and that's more of how we get people to have the same opinion as us, be on our side today, as opposed to how they did it back then. So, like, the sentiment is fantastic. It's really good. I love the baby-led idea. Yeah, not so much a fan of this very stilted, very awkward conversation that clearly never happened, on the list of things that never happened. All right, moving on. For the Ladies' Home Journal, As the Children See Us. We were speaking of some beautiful feature in the landscape as we were walking along when a little child by my side said, "Why, I cannot see it." He was quite anxious to see the object of which my brother and I were speaking, but it was out of range of vision. "I wonder how things do look from his standpoint," said Brother S., and he stooped down and brought his head on a plane with Eddie's. "It does make a difference," he said with a smile, "and I should not be surprised if other things also looked quite different from his mental and moral standpoint from what the same matter does to us." Another stilted conversation. This is great. "I have often thought of it since and believe it is consideration of far more importance than we are willing to admit, what our children really think about us. How do the little everyday acts of our lives strike them? Are they forming a good impression of their parents, one that shall stand well the test of time and future experience in life? Or are we losing ground with them and lessening our influence for good over them? We may resent the aspersion and assume that they must respect and love us because we are their parents, but it will not change the facts at all. If they see in us duplicity, meanness, bad temper, and all that brood of evil dispositions, they will not fail to know it and estimate us accordingly. Another thing we should remember is that they will not love us as a matter of course because of relationship. The deportment of more than one mother has been such that the hearts of her children were entirely estranged from her, children, too, for whom she would almost have given her life. The cares of life press most closely about the majority of us, and we are far too apt to allow the fretful word and the chronic complaint to rise to our lips. Even our tones are sometimes of a kind to make the little children think we do not love them. Pity it is for the little ones who imbibe this feeling with regard to mother. The gentle and sensitive suffer far more from heartache than a thoughtless mother ever imagines. The child's standpoint is not often realized when it is subjected to hasty reproof or summary punishment. His candid version of the story would perhaps be a surprise to the mother. I like this, though. It's like thinking of it in the sense of what do our children see? What does my child see? A little girl who was punished for her bad spirit on a certain occasion was finally impressed with the wickedness of her ways, and exhorted to go right away to her room and pray God to forgive her. She went away quite readily, and the mother, much elated with the success of her moral training, followed secretly to hear what the little penitent would say. The prayer was quite suitable, but the mother was considerably taken aback to hear her conclude with the words, "And please bless my mamma and make her temper better." That mother stole away with a new thought in her heart, which, perhaps, was a word in season. It is an excellent thing sometimes to see ourselves as others see us, especially as the little children see us. Maybell. Maybell is clearly the author. I find this a very interesting article. I think that the sentiment behind it is really, really positive, in that you need to think of what your children are seeing when you're yelling at them. Like, what do they think they did? What do they realize? Do they even realize what they did wrong? Is it clear to them why you're upset? Things like that. I think that that's really positive thing. Also to consider a child and how they might be reacting. I think that this is also a better written article than the previous one we just read. It's not a super stilted conversation the whole time, just at the beginning, a little bit, but not nearly as bad as the first one. And I really appreciate the sentiment behind this. However, I will mention one thing, in that they don't really suggest any alternatives. So if you're very upset about something, instead of yelling, what else could you do? Like, give me a few examples, you know what I mean? So it's a little bit of a missed opportunity, but hey. In general, it's a very positive article. All right, let's move on. Do not ridicule children, and I will echo the sentiment, do not ridicule children, yeah? Children often seem to say very absurd things, for which they are ridiculed or abashed. Oh, that's really sad. So I'm thinking of like my daughter, who's bilingual, and she continually mixes up her languages on this one word that she can't get right. It's with. She can't say with. For whatever reason, she can't say with, so she just uses the German word mit. Will you go mit me? Sure, honey, sure. It's very cute, by the way. Nothing, however, can be crueler than this, for the child has merely done what many a philosopher has done before him, jumped to a wrong conclusion. And if, instead of being ridiculed and made to distrust himself and avoid venturing his little speculations before us in future, we had been at the trouble of carefully examining his notions, we should have discovered how naturally perhaps the idea had arisen, or how ingeniously through a lack of knowledge the little mind had put together incongruous things. Yeah, actually it's quite interesting to think why they put things together. One thing that my older daughter has said is that, for example, she remembers right and left because she's right-handed, and she writes with her right hand. And because the word right, like writing something down, and the word right, like right versus left, sound the same, to her it's the same word. So she can't distinguish between the two words, because they're homonyms. So like that's an example of how you might jump from one to the other. If you had another homonym or something that sounded very similar, then a child might think that has a meaning of some kind. Brains look for patterns. So even if they're wrong, even if that's not where the pattern is, like for example, to right and right versus left are not related words, actually. They're completely separate words, but they sound the same, and because of that, it's very easy to think that there must be some sort of connection. So a child's brain might have made that connection and thought that was correct. So yeah, don't make fun of them. I don't know why anybody ever would for something that was clearly a mistake or a simple assumption, in which case you can just correct them. You're going to be like, oh no, that's actually not related to that, but that's very good insight on your part. And that's how I handle things like that. So, but that's just a suggestion. But this sentiment of do not ridicule children, absolutely 100% awesome. So I'm really impressed with their suggestions so far. Like, this is very modern in a sense. The way they went about it is old-fashioned, but like the actual thoughts behind it are very modern. I'm just going to read a couple little blurbs. I'm not sure if they're related to the previous ones or not. They may not be, but there we go. Mothers often fall into the habit of chiding their children for every little offense. It is don't do this and don't do that from morning until night. The command becomes odious to the child, and he pays as little attention to his mother's remonstrance as to a cat's mew. As a to-be-looked-for result, the mother loses all control of her child and makes both him and herself peevish and miserable. Once again, there's no suggestion here how you could do it differently, but yeah, I agree in that you can't constantly say, don't do this, don't do that. In fact, children don't respond very well to don'ts. They respond very well to do's. So, for example, if I say, don't leave your dirty dishes on the table, it looks terrible. Well, okay, well, tell the child what they should do then instead. And you say, please pick up your dish and bring it to the kitchen. Children are fine with that. They're like, okay, no problem. But telling them don't leave it on the table, yeah, that's annoying. Children respond much better to do's than don'ts. So another example is if you see some sort of danger, you might say, don't back up, don't take a step back. Well, the natural instinct of you just saying that makes people want to take a step back. So what you should say instead is, please take 2 steps forward. And once they take steps forward, they might look back and see what the reason was. And then they might understand, oh, there was a hole there, or whatever it was. But if you just say, don't take a step back, then they might actually automatically, without thinking, take that step back. Because you just said take a step back, even though you also included the don't. Because the don't takes longer to process, I think. So, just a little suggestion on my part on how to avoid saying don't do this, don't do that. Tell them what they should do. Give them concrete suggestions. For example, I'm struggling right now with getting my children to ask for what they want. Instead, they'll just explain the problem and be like, I can't get my shirt on. So, as a mother, I'm not 100% sure if they want help or not. If they want help, then I expect them to ask. So I will even tell them, so do you want something? And then they'll say, Mommy, can you please help me get my shirt on? And I'll say, yes, of course I can. But if you don't ask me, I'm not sure that you want my help. You might just want to try yourself. See what I mean? So, and I will let you try as long as you want to. But if you do want my help, let me know. Yeah? All right, remember the children's birthdays. Make them red letter days for them. A simple gift or a little treat answers as well as more costly gifts. It makes them happy, and that is the main point. I like that. Make a big deal out of your kids' birthdays. You don't have to spend tons of money, but just make it a big deal, you know? Big deals are cool. You know, make them a little paper crown and bake them a cake, and they'll be happy. Jeez. Yeah, I like that. I think that's important too. Anyway, I was very positively surprised by these articles. I thought there would be something super old-fashioned in it that we would have to be like, oh, geez. But honestly, there wasn't. These are very modern ideas. It was presented in a very, like, old-fashioned way. But the ideas themselves are extremely good. I mean, the idea of don't force a baby to perform, number 1. Number 2 was think about what the child is seeing when you're scolding them. And number 3 was don't ridicule a child for making mistakes. These are really, really good suggestions. So, hats off to you, Ladies Home Journal. I am super impressed. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the Microfiche Time Capsule today. And please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of these kind of videos. Make a suggestion down below if you have anything specific you'd like to see, and I hope to see you in the next video.